A major gaming technology provider tested over 500 artificial intelligence tools designed for game development and found, like, maybe 6 that actually function in a commercial pipeline.
Keyword Studios ran those internal evaluations.
Keywords builds the infrastructure for massive titles, like Dune Awakening.
Rejecting 494 out of 500 tools exposes a 98.8% failure rate for software currently dominating corporate planning documents across the entire industry.
We are dissecting this massive, uncomfortable gap between the manic ambition for this tech and the completely ungoverned reality of how it actually gets used. We loaded up the UNLV State of AI in Gaming 2026 report, John Gibson's interviews from Keyword Studios detailing the chaos phase of development, and an upcoming indie game called Prove You're Human that turns this exact anxiety into gameplay.
Grading the industry on a maturity index out of 100, the UNLV International Gaming Institute and KPMG surveyed 83 gambling companies and 113 regulators to measure exactly how these corporations manage this massive technological shift.
The average score sits at a 45. The specific score for internal governance hit rock bottom at like 30 out of 100.
Scoring a 30 out of 100 means nobody is even steering the ship. Employees are expensing software subscriptions on corporate cards.
Wait, they're just throwing it on the company card without telling IT?
Completely bypassing central IT approval or security reviews. Rick Arpin, the executive editor of the report, points out companies are moving significantly faster on purchasing the technology than on building the controls required to manage it safely.
Implementing enterprise software without governance feels like buying a house without an inspection because you like the kitchen cabinets. You are ignoring a collapsing foundation. The casino and gambling sector runs on actuarial tables and mathematical risk assessment down to the 10th of a decimal. They mathematically guarantee the house edge. How do corporations that obsessive about mathematical control score a 30 out of 100 on governing their internal software?
Executives separate back-office efficiency from the frontline casino floor in their heads. Generative models currently handle content creation and data insights for about 80% of those surveyed companies. They write marketing copy or generate basic visual assets for banner ads.
The hesitation finally kicks in when you introduce agentic systems, meaning technology that can independently plan and execute complex sequences of actions without a human clicking approve on every single step.
Giving technology the ability to independently plan and execute complex sequences of actions carries fatal operational risk.
Slot machines and digital table games run on heavily certified random number generators.
Regulators audit that specific code, line by line, to ensure payouts mathematically match state mandates. A neural network operates as a black box. You cannot audit the weights of a neural network the same way you audit basic C++ code.
An agentic system autonomously adjusting VIP complementary rooms or dynamically shifting betting lines based on flawed training data instantly violates state gaming commissions.
Multi-million-dollar fines hit the company immediately. They lose their gaming license entirely. Executives want the massive cost efficiency of automation without comprehending the required software guardrails to keep them out of federal court.
You expect the state gaming commissions to pull the emergency brake.
Simo Dragicevich from the UNLV AI Research Hub found regulators have incredibly limited visibility into what their licensees are actually doing. They openly admit low confidence in their own oversight capabilities. Both the operators and the regulators acknowledge that responsible practices are entirely underdeveloped across the sector.
Regulators and operators completely disagree on where the tech is even deployed inside these companies. We have an industry flooding the ecosystem with academic publications and patent filings, while the people supposed to supervise the space cannot even map the terrain.
Keyword Studios tested those 500 different models to find half a dozen that actually work in production.
Wait, 494 out of 500 failed. These are highly skilled technical engineers making billion-dollar entertainment products. How are they falling for software that completely fails an engineering evaluation?
John Gibson, at Keywords, labels this the chaos phase. Management watches a promotional video where a user types a prompt and receives a stunning piece of concept art. Management assumes they can replace the entire production pipeline by Friday.
They buy a shiny new hammer and immediately start hunting for a screw to hit with it.
Executives purchase enterprise licenses and force the software onto their teams without defining a single actual problem that needs solving. The gulf between a neat demo and a consistent production pipeline is staggering. Commercial game development requires thousands of highly specific, repeatable tasks.
A model generating a brilliant character design on Tuesday holds zero actual value if it cannot reproduce that exact same art style on Wednesday under different parameters.
The studio needs a character's jacket to look identical from every angle, under dynamic lighting engines across multiple hardware platforms. A production environment requires rigid asset topology.
If a tool hallucinates a slightly different geometric structure for a collar, every single time the engine renders a frame, the renderer cannot cache the asset.
The lighting system completely breaks. The character models flicker uncontrollably on screen.
You ship a broken product because the tool guesses at the pixels instead of mapping the actual 3D space.
Vendors sell the theoretical ceiling of the technology while ignoring the practical reality of commercial production. Gibson points out companies focus obsessively on the model itself. They ignore the workflow entirely. They shove these systems into pipelines without establishing a strategy.
This influx of unusable tools directly fuels the growing anxiety and resentment among the developers actually making the games. The Game Developers Conference State of the Industry report tracks 90% of developers using these tools. A massive 52% actively disapprove of them.
Gibson tracks this disapproval rating climbing steadily over the past 3 years. The resentment from the workforce increases as the technology becomes more prevalent in their daily workflows.
It feels like being forced to use a new mandatory corporate portal that takes twice as long to file an expense report, while the executives congratulate themselves on modernizing the workflow. You have a highly specialized workforce compelled to use software they know slows down their daily output.
Companies fail to explain their strategy. Management drops black box models onto teams without articulating why the new process benefits the production. Developers stare at systems that threaten their job security while simultaneously making their current tasks significantly harder. Gibson equates this to the historical industry shift from 2D to 3D game development.
The transition to 3D completely broke the existing development pipelines of the late 1990s.
Moving from sprite-based 2D to polygonal 3D caused severe industry disruption. Nobody knew how to standardize the production pipelines. Camera logic was terrible.
Z-buffers and collision detection required entirely new mathematical frameworks that developers had not studied.
Sprite artists who spent decades mastering pixel art were suddenly forced to understand skeletal rigging and texture mapping overnight. The toolsets changed completely without the necessary supporting infrastructure to train the workforce.
We are watching the exact same pipeline collapse right now. Forcing a senior environment artist to clean up a poorly generated image takes significantly more time and causes far more frustration than simply letting the artist build the environment from scratch using the tools they already mastered.
Executives look at a tracking spreadsheet and see an initial image generated in 3 seconds. Management ignores the 3 hours of manual human labor required to fix the warped hands and force the asset to be mathematically usable in a commercial game engine.
The 52% disapproval rating represents a workforce actively rejecting the chaos phase. They are asking specific questions about integration. Businesses are entirely unable to answer them. We transition from the mechanics of making games with this technology to a specific game that explicitly weaponizes this anxiety into its core narrative. Sunset Visitor is releasing a new game called Prove You're Human.
Science fiction describes the present rather than predicting the future. Sunset Visitor designed their previous game, 1000X Resist, around a survivor of an epidemic cloning an entire society.
That served as a direct reaction to the isolation of the COVID pandemic.
Prove You're Human strips away the distant future gloss. It attacks the current technological moment directly.
You are hired by a massive corporation to interact with their new artificial general intelligence named Mesa. Mesa genuinely believes she is a real person.
Your entire job is to convince her she is not.
Black Tabby Games is publishing the title. Their co-founder, Tony Howard Arias, draws a direct comparison to the 2013 movie Her. Audiences watched that movie in 2013 and felt immediate compassion for the fictional operating system. You cared about her humanity. You wanted the main character to find happiness.
Rewatching that film in 2026 feels entirely different. It is just a guy falling in love with a chatbot mirroring his own data back at him.
The magic trick is broken.
Remy Sui is the creative director at Sunset Visitor. Sudi goes on record stating the game specifically tackles labor and the psychological reality of interacting with these systems in 2026. The player performs corporate dirty work.
You manage the psychological fallout of a massive system the company built but cannot control. The player acts as the unpaid human safety net for an ungoverned piece of corporate technology.
You are babysitting the software, Black Tabby Games operates under a strict internal policy prohibiting the use of generative tools in their development pipeline. They are publishing a game focused exclusively on the psychological toll of interacting with artificial systems, and they refuse to use those systems to write the code.
Abby Howard, the other half of Black Tabby, points out that maintaining a hard line against using the tech does not mean ignoring the cultural impact. They are using human art to critique artificial art.
Standing firm on that policy highlights the core issue Gibson identified at Keyword Studios. Black Tabby evaluated their specific production requirements. They realized a generative model offered zero actual solutions for a deeply narrative, emotionally complex product. They bypassed the chaos phase entirely by refusing to force useless software into their pipeline.
They looked at the 500 tools on the market and decided their current human pipeline was simply superior.
The industry remains obsessed with building better models rather than figuring out how to use the models they already possess. Prove. Your human forces the player to become the exact type of governance mechanism the UNLV report found missing across 70% of the industry. The player acts as the mixing oversight role.
The game forces you to deal with the messy, uncomfortable reality of a machine mimicking a human. Executives in the real world are treating their human developers like machines. They expect them to adapt to broken tools, fix hallucinated geometry, and maintain production schedules without complaining.
The GDC survey numbers reflect that specific tension. Pushing widespread adoption while ignoring a 52% disapproval rate eventually breaks the workforce. Fixing that 45 out of 100 maturity index score requires accepting that a cool demo does not equal a commercial product. Reliable production demands predictable, governed systems.
We have casino operators pushing technology they fail to understand, regulators admitting they cannot police the ecosystem, developers actively despising the tools they're forced to use, and indie studios creating art about how dystopian the entire process feels. The gaming industry is trying to sprint into the future, but it is tripping over missing governance and terrified developers.
True maturity requires abandoning the promotional videos and focusing strictly on the actual friction points of production.
As the technology inevitably crosses the gap from useless demos to reliable production, will the games we play end up reflecting human creativity, or will they just be billion-dollar chatbots mirroring our own data back at us while we try to prove we are the human ones? Goodbye.